The theme of this lesson is Know Thyself. But the question may naturally arise, why should I seek to know myself? According to the Edgar Cayce readings, knowing ourselves is a crucial stage of our spiritual journey. One reading speaks to all of us when it says, each are called in their respective sphere. Each must find the answer in their own selves. All of us are called upon to answer, according to our own unique talents and abilities, an individual calling in this lifetime. The only way to know our particular mission is to search for it deep within ourselves. One man asked Edgar Cayce, "Whom should I contact in order to attain my best development?" His reading answered, "First, know self. Contact first and foremost that necessary for self to understand, not only to have knowledge concerning, but to understand why life is as it is in material planes." We are promised, then, that the more we look, the more we search, and the more we use what we know about ourselves, applying what we've learned in everyday life, the more will be given to us to know and to understand, and the greater we will progress in our spiritual journey. Another person asked, "Is there more that I can do at this time?" The sleeping Cayce answered, "Keep on keeping on, and as this, that, or the other experience opens the understanding of that necessary for spiritual or physical activity, be willing and ready to answer." The phrase "keep on keeping on" reminds us that the process of knowing ourselves is an ongoing one. It takes persistence. By observing ourselves closely, non-judgmentally, and often, we can come to know ourselves in new ways. In other words, we can begin to discover how so many of our actions and reactions are determined by habit. Once we clearly see these behavior patterns in ourselves, once we can identify them as they begin to happen in us, we reach an important new level in self-knowledge. Then and only then can we begin to change the habits that keep us from our most important purposes in living this lifetime. For example, the business executive who doubts her abilities for giving a presentation for colleagues may benefit from realizing that she consistently sets herself up for failure by mentally previewing images of herself making many mistakes before even entering the meeting room. Or she may simply observe that she says to herself silently but repeatedly beforehand, "I can't do this. I just know I'm not going to do it right." If she can change that mental preview of herself making mistakes with a new image of being clear and concise in her communications, then she has wisely used self-observation to change a habitual tendency to doubt herself. George Gurdjieff, a spiritual teacher and contemporary of Cayce's, referred to our submergence in these habitual behavior patterns as a sleep-like state of consciousness. It is in this state of consciousness, says Gurdjieff, that we unfortunately spend most of our lives. According to his theory, this sleep-like condition, which most of us would consider normal, masks the essence of our real selves. It keeps us from our real destiny in life, but we can awake from sleep-like living to that essence. It is then that we are capable of knowing our real selves, not just our superficial selves, and it is then that we are ready to conduct our lives as they are meant to be conducted. In the language of the Cayce readings, this essence is related to our soul's purpose in any given incarnation. Getting to know this deep part of ourselves is an ongoing process of discovery. The learning comes only through doing what we know to do from what we have already learned. Cayce's reading for one 52-year-old woman told her, "For what ye are, as in each activity, gives a strength or weakens thee, for the next lesson ye are able to recite. How well ye will meet the problems as they are presented depends upon how well ye have mastered and do master the problems before thee from day to day." How then, in a practical fashion, do we indeed go about the business of knowing ourselves? The affirmation for this lesson in A Search for God gives us a clue about one important way. It asks that we each may come to know ourselves even as we are known. That may mean, of course, as we are known in God's eyes, but it also means how we are known in the eyes of our fellow human beings here in the earth. That's a tall order when you think about it. Have you ever tried to see yourself, really see, I mean, in the same way that someone else you know may be seeing you? Let's try that right now. We'll take some time to do a journal writing exercise to practice that approach. Make sure you're in a place where you will not be disturbed for about 15 minutes. You'll need a couple of pieces of paper and either a pen or pencil. Pause the tape now and get yourself set up. With your paper and writing instrument near you, let's first go through a preparatory imagination exercise. The purpose of the brief introduction will be to get you into the feelings and mindset of another person. You'll be choosing someone who knows you well, both your good points and your weaknesses. In the guided imagination exercise, you will become that person, seeing the world and other people as that person might see things. Most importantly, you will re-experience a situation or an encounter that the two of you had. This will give you the chance to see yourself in the way that someone else sees and experiences you. At the end of this preparation exercise, you will be instructed to open your eyes, pause the tape, and write about what you have seen, thought, and felt, still in the identity of this other person. So let's begin by finding a comfortable sitting position. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Concentrate only on the flowing in and out of your breath. You need not change the rate of your breathing. Simply put your concentration on your breath and allow a feeling of warmth to come over you as you breathe comfortably and easily. Allow there to come to your mind the face of someone who knows your strengths and your faults. Feel the presence of that person. Look into his or her eyes. Take a moment and remember, in detail, a situation or encounter that the two of you had. Now, become the person and view this situation and yourself from their perspective. See your actions and words as this person saw them. Now slowly, begin to bring your attention back, but stay with the same sense of identity. Continue to be the person who has just relived the situation or encounter. Slowly, open your eyes and look around you. Nearby there is paper and a writing instrument. In a moment, you will pause the tape and spend at least 10 minutes writing about the perceptions, thoughts, and feelings that you have just had. You will be writing about a person who you know well, someone whose strengths and weaknesses you are able to see clearly. Write about what you see, what you think and feel about that person. Pause the tape now until you have finished writing. Now, having finished writing, hold in your hand what has been recorded. As you look at that paper, feel how your identity is beginning to change. You are becoming yourself again. You are moving back into your familiar way of seeing things, of feeling and thinking. What you hold in your hand is a written set of insights from someone who cares about you, someone who knows many different sides of you and has taken the time to write down for you some objective observations so that you can know yourself more fully. Let's take time now to read what is written. Read it as if you were seeing the words for the first time. Feel open and undefensive about the comments. Allow yourself to see yourself as someone else knows you. Pause the tape now for a couple of minutes and do this. Stand aside and watch self go by. This is what the Casey readings invite us to do. But it's not an easy exercise, whether in reverie or in real everyday experiences. However, it is worth doing at least once daily as a powerful tool for self-knowledge. Being more conscious of how we act, think, and feel in any given situation is important. if we are to come to know ourselves better. As we begin to peel away the layers of self-delusion, we find that at every stage of life there is the tension of polarities. Each polarity offers choices, challenges to balance competing sides of ourselves: love and wisdom, intellect and intuition, freedom and mutual dependence, joyfulness and seriousness. We progress from one stage of awareness to another, only to find that each stage offers its own polarities, more choices for us to make. Dr. Harmon Brough divides our journey through self-awareness into 3 stages, giving each stage a meaningful symbol. He characterizes the first stage as the dwarf, the second stage as the enchanter, and the third stage as the royal self. The first of these stages corresponds to the beginning of self-observation, as we set out to truly know ourselves even as we are known. The symbol of the dwarf is especially appropriate because that's what we're very likely to see when we first take a cold, hard, honest look at ourselves. Shy, stunted little creature, cringing as we regard it with all of its apparent blemishes. But the dwarf, says Brough, carries with it the gift of high energy, of self-discovery, if only we can love it for itself, just as it is. The dwarf self that we see when we first look long and hard and honestly at ourselves points out our genuine need to have healthy egos, to believe in ourselves without condemnation, just as we are. A healthy ego must be in each of us before any of us can sacrifice ourselves to a higher principle. So the dwarf needs our love, our compassion, our understanding, as well as our critical eye. It means loving the ugly things about ourselves that we first see upon careful self-observation. As the Casey readings put it, "Be not ashamed to be what you are. If you are, there's something amiss. Think not that the abilities of self are lacking in such conditions. Doubt not that thine own supplications reach the throne of grace or mercy. Show forth, then, that in thine activities day by day, that in the union of strength comes a greater understanding in all." What the symbol of the dwarf points to is that which needs attention in us, and what we must do is give that attention by loving and tending to what needs changing within ourselves. In other words, the dwarf points to a line of action. Oftentimes, according to the Casey readings, we must take a step, we must do, even before we fully understand. As one reading said, "As self keeps self nearer in attune, in accord, in vibration, in coordinating of vibration, nearer the awakening, nearer the ability to heal self and give life, light, understanding to another. Each individual, as this entity, should know, first is the application, then the understanding and the knowledge of that applied." So sometimes we must take a step, take an action, not knowing for sure whether it is the right one or not. But as we apply, as we act, we begin to understand more and to know more about ourselves. So our journey in self-knowledge begins in loving this dwarf, or the shadow side of ourselves, as Jungian psychology would call it. For if we can truly love the shadow side in ourselves, the dwarf will soon stand up straight and shed its hideous appearance, to transform into the enchanter, the symbol of our second stage of self-knowledge. The symbol of the enchanter is that part of us that is full of potential, that is sparkling with imagination, that carries its own mystery and great promise. It represents everything within us that is not ego, instead, that mysterious part that seeks newness and adventure, and that brings wonder and surprise into our lives. It may come in the form of a psychic experience, or an awakening to the power of creative forces within us. However, there is a danger associated with this stage of self-knowledge. The danger, the ever-present choice for the enchanter, comes in not using this new awareness for good and for the benefit of others, but simply for the self-centered thrill we get from the experience itself. Yet if we continue to use the gifts of the enchanter by giving to and forgiving others, we may at last awaken to the third stage of self-awareness, the royal self. This royal self hears the call of God and answers it without fanfare, says Dr. Bro. It comes from within us at those times when there is the greatest need, and gives us the capacity to do what needs to be done, to speak what needs to be said, and to draw others to us to see what is needed. It is the symbol of that real identity within us that is here to serve, to forgive and heal. If misused, the royal self manifests only as self-importance or stubborn self-will, but allowed to show fully its true colors, the royal self can lead us to our very mission for this lifetime. In the images of our dreams, these stages may be symbolized in various ways. The dwarf may appear as a mindless, violent character, or a figure of darkness, again the Jungian shadow figure. The enchanter may appear as the opposite sex, a guide or protecting angel, or as a lover or siren. The royal self may be symbolized in dreams as a loving child, a cosmic presence, a gem beautifully fashioned, or even as the Christ figure. Since the meaning of specific images in dreams is never totally the same for any two people, it takes practice to recognize and understand the symbols and themes from one's dreams that carry their own unique meaning for the dreamer. One tool for self-awareness is to keep track of your dreams in a dream journal or notebook, and learn to work with them in your daily life. If you regularly record your dreams and your feelings about them, you can use them in conjunction with the day-to-day events in your life to explore answers to questions and give you new insights into concerns or problems you may be facing. One woman who had been struggling with the question of staying on a demanding job and was juggling it with an abundance of activities in her life had the following dream. First, she saw a pair of bright, shiny black, spit-polished men's shoes, the kind that military men often wear. Then, standing in those shoes, appeared a doll she had had when she was a 12-year-old girl. The doll was 3 feet tall, and its features were very similar to the dreamer's own. As soon as the dreamer had identified the doll in the dream, it fell forward, as though unbalanced and unable to stand up, and then disappeared. Then the dreamer woke up. In examining this dream, the dreamer concluded that rather than failing to live up to her responsibilities, as she had been feeling was the case, perhaps she was asking herself to fill bigger shoes than it was fair to ask of herself at that time. By examining the dream closely, the dreamer was able to see that her tendency to take on more and more was having a detrimental effect on that sensitive part of herself she felt was represented in her dream by the doll. Subsequently, the dreamer began to observe her tendencies to accept more and more responsibility. Before making further commitments, she began to weigh the importance of the proposed new responsibility against the need to maintain an inner balance within herself. Deeper self-knowledge comes not only through studying dreams that happen during sleep, but also through daily observations of the thoughts we dwell upon consciously during waking hours. The Casey readings tell us that what we think or dwell upon mentally with consistency is what we become. What thoughts go through your mind habitually throughout a day? Are you constantly questioning your own worth? Are you wondering if you'll ever amount to anything? Perhaps you constantly tell yourself you're much better than others, always commenting to yourself about the inadequacy of this person or the incompetence of that one. You might also observe how often prayer enters into your thought patterns during any given day. How frequently do you appeal for guidance from your Creator during the day? How often do you give thanks for your joyous moments or forgive others in your thoughts? This kind of self-examination is crucial to self-knowledge. Your answers to these kinds of questions may be seen as keys for knowing how you are building toward your own reality. Of course, this does not mean that every time you have a negative thought you will have built a negative reality. It does mean, however, that consistently dwelling on negative thoughts can build a corresponding experience. But on the bright side, dwelling on consistent positive thoughts can build a positive reality. So, to review what has been covered so far, we've seen that it is important to know ourselves because the self is the cornerstone of our spiritual journey. By trying to see ourselves as others see us, whether in imagination or in actual observation, we can use this important tool for knowing ourselves. We've also seen that action is important to this process of self-knowledge. Sometimes, if we do not know exactly what to do, it is better to take some action than to do nothing at all. We've examined the 3 stages of self-discovery with the accompanying rewards they may bring: the dwarf, the enchanter, and the royal self. Each stage of self-knowledge gives us choices. We can make good use or ill use of our self-knowledge at any of these 3 stages. Dreams are also a good place to look for clues about ourselves and how we function. Valuable guidance may be gleaned from dreams if we study them at the same time that we study ourselves. A journal of our thoughts and spiritual insights can help us keep in touch with who we are, because what we dwell on mentally, we become. Self-exploration can be challenging business. It takes a firm commitment and the vow to keep on keeping on, even when the going gets difficult. The Know Thyself chapter in the A Search for God material is the 2nd lesson. Therefore, it is one of the basic, essential steps in our spiritual journey, one upon which the rest of the journey builds. May your journey be a rewarding challenge as you continue along the path of knowing yourself.